we start with a cautionary tale, because these readings involve a subjective interpretation of the steps we are detailing. If you don't pay careful attention, you may wind up with the wrong idea. In part 5, we explore the concept of energy, all that applies to controlling energy. Attaining Spiritual Mastery, Part 5, Precept number 1. Energy is potential, force, influence, and some form of authority over the passivity of the world around you. Generally, management of your resources, your energies, is fundamentally the same, whether you consider spiritual energies, emotional energies, intellectual energies, physical energies, or even the expenditure of money, which is concentrated time, effort, and attention into fluid currency. To manage all of your energies is to assign responsibilities to each type of energy that you perceive yourself as having. A spiritual master prioritizes expanding energies, which are most abundant, over energies which are wanting in quantity. The cultivation of energies in which you find yourself lacking in can be a positive dream or desire to achieve in and of itself. Through self-discipline, a spiritual master expends energies only in accordance with the priority just mentioned. Plentiful energies are expanded foremost, whereas lacking energies are expended less selectively. For example, one who is great in spiritual energies but lacking in money will expend spiritual energies first and foremost and make an effort to conserve their money as much as possible. Whereas one who is rich in money but lacking in spiritual energies will spend much money and make an effort to conserve their spiritual energies as much as possible. Thus, a spiritual master's control over their use of energies is merely a matter of organization. He or she expends bountiful energies with the same shrewdness as that which he or she expends those energies which are lacking. Precept number 2. To control a lot of energy is the same as to control very little. This is a matter of self-discipline and self-coordination. When massive amounts of energy are employed, certainly there seems to be a grand distinction between the means of expenditure and the manifestation of what results from the expenditure of those energies, as compared to the expenditure of very little energies. Yet the distinction is an appearance, a material surface to an essential process which is occurring beneath the apparent face of what is happening. Therefore, energies are expended by observing the signals which result from their use. Spend some energy and observe what happens. Spend more and observe what happens again. Thus, energies will never be spent in vain by a spiritual master, for that which appears to yield success towards the realization and manifestation of one's positive dreams and desires does not happen by a mere chance of circumstances. Rather, it is because these energies have been directed by the spiritual master towards not only achieving, but also sensing whether to continue in one's course of action or to change that course. Thus, energies expended which result in a valiant step forward in pursuit of one's positive dreams and desires are as fruitful as energies expended which result in careful retreat and change of course. A spiritual master wastes nothing. Precept number 3. That the spiritual master's efforts are able to sustain him or her against life's resistance without suffering defeat is due to the operations of the spiritual master in expending their energies. The resistance that confronts you directly is the normal. The resistance that sneaks up on you indirectly is the extraordinary. No one is a spiritual master who does not engage life with their own extraordinary efforts by using indirect means. But for indirect means to have any measure of success, one must already be employing direct means. What becomes considered as indirect is the subtle and fringe aspects of your efforts. What becomes considered as direct is the gross and central aspect of your efforts. Have others in your life, whether friend or foe, conceived that your indirect efforts are your direct efforts, and that your direct efforts are your indirect efforts? That way, any resistance you encounter is redirected away from the heart of your operations as a spiritual master. Precept 4. Energies expended against what opposes your efforts must be as a solid acting upon a void. In other words, use your most solid approach when expending your energies to ensure that your opposition is crushed. Precept 5. Generally, in life, a spiritual master uses the direct expenditure of his or her energies to engage life, but uses his or her indirect expenditure of energies in order to achieve victory. Thus, what is apparent to others about what you are doing is never necessarily what you are ultimately trying to achieve. What is not apparent to others about what you are doing is almost always what you are ultimately trying to achieve. Precept 6. Now the resources, the energies of a spiritual master are as infinite as the heavens and the spiritually concealed depths of the earth. This is so because the spiritual master is skilled at using indirect means to achieve their positive dreams and desires. The flow of energy for a spiritual master always yields more energies, which may be expended to produce more. Thus, a river of energies flows through the spiritual master, constantly passing through him or her, as he or she never wastes a moment to engage life in the way he or she must engage it. Precept 7. For energies end and recommence. The flow of energies is cyclical, as are the movements of the sun and moon. Energies die away and are reborn. They are ever recurrent, as the passing of the seasons. The key to infinite energy in the moment, then, is the speed of which the cycle inside the spiritual master turns. Efforts directed properly towards all that has been written in this series will spin that cycle most quickly and return energies almost as swiftly as they were spent. However, one must bear in mind that energies are interchangeable and exchangeable. So the types of energies you expend are not necessarily the types of energies you receive back. For example, ordinary work at an ordinary job usually requires some degree of expenditure of physical or intellectual energies, and in return, monetary energies are received as pay. The expenditure of spiritual energies can yield intellectual energies in return in the form of concrete ideas. The expenditure of emotional energies can yield spiritual energies. The expenditure of money can yield physical, emotional, and intellectual energies from that which you purchase with money, and so forth. There really is no necessity to mentally distinguish how one form of energy converts into another. All forms of energy may be exchanged in order to be converted into another form of energy. Precept 8. Depending on how you look at it, there are only so many types of energies, though you can make finer distinctions between them all and subdivide them to make their expenditures more clearly focused to yourself. However, the combinations of energies you may expend and the sequences in which you may expend them are so numerous that one cannot possibly visualize them all. Precept 9. Likewise, depending on your point of view, the combinations of energies which you may receive back and the sequences in which you may receive them are so infinite that you cannot possibly imagine them all either. Precept 10. A spiritual master is just a human being, and the primary driver of a human being is to feel in ways which the human being wants to feel. The way life can feel can be distinguished down to a finite list of emotions, but again, the combinations of feelings and the sequences in which you may feel them are so various that one cannot possibly anticipate them all. Thus, no matter how self-disciplined and controlled you are, you will never be barred from the novelty and surprise of life experiences, at least in terms of how it will feel. Precept 11. In life, there are only the direct and indirect methods of advancement, but their combinations are limitless. None can comprehend them all. Precept 12. For the direct and indirect are mutually reproductive to one another, their interaction as endless as that of interlocking rings. Who can determine where one ends and the other begins? Precept 13. The efforts of a spiritual master can move mountains because the spiritual momentum they build in all that they do. Precept 14. A spiritual master's efforts are effective because of their spiritual strength. And strength is not only forceful power, but speed and timing as well. Precept 14. A spiritual master's efforts are effective because of their spiritual strength. And strength is not only forceful power, but speed and timing as well. Do not become confused by this statement. Do not set yourself up to be in a rush, for that phrase, in a rush, designates hasty and foolishly inconsiderate actions. Seize the objects of your positive dreams and desires swiftly. It surely achieves conquering one's positive dreams and desires for the reason that the spiritual master has waited for the right moment to claim victory. The moments of a spiritual master are all carefully controlled. Precept 15. Thus, the momentum of a spiritual master is overwhelming to the passive nature of the world and the materialists which inhabit it, for his or her efforts are precisely regulated. Precept 16. The potential of a spiritual master is that of a cheetah ready to sprint. His or her timing, the released fury of the cheetah in its sprint. Precept 17. In the ups and downs of experience, life seems chaotic, but there is no disorder. A spiritual master's efforts appear to be circular but cannot be defeated. To the untrained eye, in life all appears to be turmoil and confusion. But the spiritual signals and undercurrents of what happens have prescribed arrangements, and the appearances of things on their material surface are governed by fixed rules. Precept 18. Thus, a spiritual master will appear to be confused when everything is in a good order. He or she will appear cowardly when he or she is really being courageous. He or she will appear weak when he or she is actually strong. To feign disorder, a spiritual master practices extraordinary self-discipline. Extraordinary in this sense being relative to the materialists of this world. Only then can he or she feign confusion. One who wishes to stimulate cowardice and lie in wait for the objects of his or her positive dreams and desires must be courageous, for only then is he or she able to stimulate fear. One who wishes to appear to be weak in order to make his or her opposition arrogant must be extremely strong. Only then can he or she feign weakness. Precept 19. Order or disorder depends upon organization. Courage or cowardice depends upon circumstances. Strength or weakness upon the spiritual master's inherent qualities of mind and character. Be wary of the counteractive principle to this knowledge, for a coward easily poses as one who is brave in a favorable situation. When the situation is lost, the brave become cowards. In life, despite all that is written in this series on spiritual mastery, there are no fixed rules. Rules can only be worked out according to circumstances. Thus, you are hearing or listening to this series of posts not to have a specific idea of what always to do and what never to do. You are just mentally conditioning and training yourself to be prepared. You are defeating fear by gaining in knowledge from what we are sharing with you. Likewise, you are gaining in love for life itself and all its intricacies, both inside you and outside you. Precept 20. Thus, those who are spiritual masters create situations in which the world and those who oppose them must conform to his or her will. A spiritual master entices those who stand in opposition to them with something they are certain to take, and with lures of profit which appear to be true, but is not necessarily so. Those who oppose the spiritual master await him or her in strength. In so doing, they are set up to be in a position which is easily assailable through all of which is written or read in this series of posts. Precept 21. Therefore, a spiritual master seeks victory from the situation, but does not demand it from those he or she depends upon in order to achieve that victory. Spiritual masters depend especially on opportunity and expediency. They do not place the burden of accomplishment on those they depend upon alone. Precept 22. When involving others, a spiritual master selects those they will depend upon by matching their qualities to the necessity of upcoming situations. A spiritual master does not play favorites, such as with relatives and friends. Valiant people are good for direct confrontations. Cautious people are good for defending against confrontation altogether. And experienced people are good on account of the wise counsel they can give you. Thus, there is none in your life that you depend upon whose talent is wasted. Do not demand accomplishment of those who have no talent. When depending upon others, the opportunity for victory or defeat lies in this one principle. Dealing with life is a matter of deception. Those who are greedy and stupid may serve a purpose when set to the proper ends that suit them. The wise and the brave may likewise serve their purpose when set to other ends which suit them instead. Do not charge people with what they cannot do. Select them and give them responsibilities that match up with their abilities. Precept 23. He or she who relies on the situation uses those he or she depends upon based on how they are suited to the situation. In stable circumstances, those a spiritual master depends upon lack in movement, action, and change. In unstable circumstances, those a spiritual master depends upon move, take action, and change. If forced into circumstances in which they are boxed in, those a spiritual master depends upon stop. If in free circumstances which do not encumber or hinder them, those a spiritual master depend upon move forward. Precept 24. Thus, it should be revealed by now that energies you may expend include those you depend upon and their energies too. Spiritual mastery is not a lonesome journey, for it involves as many others as possible. Thus, a spiritual master needs to use but little strength to achieve much. In life, there are three kinds of situations you ultimately face as a spiritual master. The first is when your ego is contemptuous of your opposition, and your ambitions are soaring high, and your spirit is as fierce as a hurricane. This situation exemplifies your high confidence, enthusiasm, and discipline. The second is when faced with a situation in which you are vastly outnumbered by all that opposes you. You take up a position which is fraught with spiritual peril and misdirection, both for yourself and for those who oppose you. So all that opposes you stumbles clumsily and finds it confusing to deal with you. This situation exemplifies your cleverness, shrewdness, and skill with strategy and tactics. The third is when you find your opposition lax, weak, or wary, and you seize upon your opposition itself while it is unprepared against you. This situation exemplifies your boldness, strength, and speed. Therefore, when expending energies, a spiritual master takes advantage of the situation such that the gravity of their efforts propels their efforts far and beyond what they have actually done. The force applied is tiny, but the results are enormous.